You're tuning into the deep dive, and you know what we're all about, those head-scratching stories, the ones where you lean in and think, wait, how did that actually happen?
Exactly. We try and cut through the noise.
Get straight to the fascinating core of things. And today, we're plunging into a truly legendary piece of criminal history, the Hatton Garden Heist.
Yeah, a story that's often called one of the most audacious burglaries ever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the details, I mean, it's easy to see why. We've got a really compelling set of sources to explore this time.
Absolutely. We've dug through detailed accounts from The Independent and the Daily Mail, piecing together the crucial information.
Right.
We also have a timeline from The Independent, which really helps map out the
Huh.
the years of planning and the events of that incredible Easter weekend.
That timeline's really useful. And to give us a broader perspective, we've looked at a Wikipedia entry listing significant UK heists just to see where Hatton Garden fits in.
Good context.
And finally, a transcript from a 60 Minutes Australia segment. That offers some really sharp insights and commentary.
Okay, so as you join us for this deep dive, our aim is to go far beyond just the basic headlines.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
want to dissect the key elements, the target itself, the remarkably intricate planning involved,
This was very intricate in parts.
the execution of the job, and the quite surprising aftermath,
Hmm.
all to uncover those aha moments that reveal just what made this crime so unforgettable.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the target, Hatton Garden. For centuries, this has been the absolute heart of London's diamond and jewelry trade.
It really is the place.
And right in the middle of it all stood the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Center. This wasn't just any old storage facility, was it?
Oh, far from it. Built back in the 1940s, the vault was practically considered a fortress.
Right.
You know, the kind of place people thought was genuinely impenetrable. But what's particularly interesting is the unique clientele it attracted. It wasn't only legitimate jewelry businesses using it.
Oh.
The criminal underworld also relied on its security and discretion. It was almost a neutral territory.
A neutral zone
Mhm.
for jewelers and criminals?
Kind of, yeah. Where both sides of the law felt their valuables would be safe. You know, anonymity, tight security.
That's a fascinating dynamic. And inside this supposedly impenetrable building was this massive basement vault. Give us a sense of the defenses.
Okay, picture a large room filled with rows of sturdy metal cabinets. 996 individual safety deposit boxes in total.
Wow.
And these weren't flimsy. They were bolted to both the floor and the ceiling.
Okay.
Access was through a combination-coded door protected by thick, substantial walls.
Sounds tough.
But here's a detail that really stands out. The security was primarily handled by just 2 long-serving guards.
Only 2.
Yeah, and their procedures were incredibly still based on practices from the 1940s.
You're joking. In the 21st century, 1940s protocols. What does that tell us?
Well, it suggests maybe overconfidence, perhaps a belief that because it had been secure for so long, it would just stay that way.
Complacency, maybe.
Or maybe just cost-cutting, you know. Updates deemed unnecessary. And it gets even more surprising.
Go on.
The lift down to the basement.
So,
Out of service for decades.
decades.
Yeah. Plus, even after a change of ownership 7 years before the heist, the entry codes, they weren't updated.
Unbelievable. So it sounds like a target that, despite its reputation, might have had some significant vulnerabilities.
Definitely some cracks in the fortress wall, so to speak.
And it wasn't just legitimate businesses storing their goods there, was it?
No, not at all. We learned that even criminals used the center. Actually, a lieutenant from the Addams Family Crime Syndicate.
A big name in London.
Yeah, a very well-known criminal organization. He actually recommended it to a drug dealer.
Wow. Criminals trusting a supposedly secure facility that other criminals were also using. It really does highlight that unusual ecosystem.
It does. And Brian Reeder, who became a key figure in the heist, he had a previous connection to that family, didn't he?
He did.
That's right, going back to the Brinks Mat job. You know, the huge gold bullion robbery from the 80s.
Right, I remember that one.
Surveillance even caught Reeder with a Hatton Garden gold dealer back in '85, talking about how to handle the gold from that raid.
So these connections run deep. Shows how these networks persist over decades.
Exactly, they intersect.
Okay, so the target.
Yeah.
Valuable, famous, but maybe surprisingly weak in places. Now, with this sort of vulnerable fortress as their goal, let's get into the planning. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing, was it?
Absolutely not. The planning stretched over an astonishing 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. Our timeline shows Daniel Jones starting his online searches for drills way back in August 2012.
Just casually browsing for heavy-duty drills.
Apparently so. By May 2014, he was specifically looking at the Hilltide DD350,
Which was?
the very drill they ultimately used to breach the vault. That level of long-term focus is, well, it's quite extraordinary.
3 years of drill research.
Yeah.
That's serious commitment. And it wasn't just online stuff, right? There was actual reconnaissance.
Correct. A jeweler next door, Lionel Whiffen, reported feeling uneasy. He even suspected he was being watched from around January 2015.
Near the building.
Yeah, 8890 Hatton Garden. Suggests the gang was actively observing the location, probably noting routines, security, that sort of thing.
And they had a regular meeting spot for all this plotting. The classic pub meeting.
Seems so. The Castle Pub in Islington became their regular haunt from January 2015 onwards,
You can almost picture it.
strategizing over drinks. Though one report, kind of humorously, mentioned them sticking to mineral water in the final stages.
Plotting a multi-million-pound heist over mineral water. Brilliant. But preparations went beyond just meetings, didn't they? There was even a sighting someone inside the building beforehand.
Yes, around March 31st, 2015, a visitor recalled seeing a white-haired man, 60s, matching Terry Perkins' description, in the lift. Yeah, wearing blue overalls, surrounded by tools. She even remembered him smiling because there wasn't enough room for her.
Just an innocent moment at the time.
Exactly. Takes on a whole different meaning later.
And Brian Reeder was also physically nearby, just days before the actual break-in.
That's noted, yeah. April 2nd, 2015, he used someone else's Oyster card to travel near Hatton Garden.
Trying to stay off the grid.
Took a bus, then the train. Indicates a deliberate effort to avoid using his own travel card, presumably. Keep a low profile.
Makes sense. And beyond scouting and tools, they were checking the value of the potential haul.
Absolutely. Online research into the prices of gold and diamonds
Okay.
suggests they had a clear idea of what they were hoping for, probably help estimate the potential score.
But maybe one of the most surprising, almost unbelievable details of their planning came out later, didn't it? Something found at Daniel Jones's home.
Indeed. Amongst the stolen goods and other evidence, police found a copy of Forensics for Dummies.
No. Seriously.
Yes. Forensics for Dummies. It's a detail that's both darkly comic and also hints at a certain level of, well, maybe misguided confidence.
Or maybe a very basic understanding of how not to get caught.
Perhaps.
Huh.
Does it suggest a fundamental misunderstanding of forensic science, even among seasoned criminals? It's bizarre.
Forensics for Dummies. You really couldn't make this stuff up. Okay, so after all that extensive, slightly strange planning, the Easter long weekend, April 2nd to 5th, 2015, game time. How did they actually get in?
Right. This is where the mysterious figure known only as Basil comes in.
Ah, yes, Basil, the ghost.
Described as a red-haired man, identity never definitively confirmed. He was the one who initially got into 8890 Hatton Garden,
Ow.
possibly using a key or maybe a specialized bypass tool. Interestingly, a 20-pound receipt for a tool like that was later found at Jones's place.
That little receipt.
Could be crucial. Once inside, Basil opened a fire escape door, letting the rest of the crew in.
So Basil was literally the key to the whole operation.
You could say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Both literally and figuratively. And once the main team was inside, they adopted a rather unassuming disguise.
Right, the maintenance worker look.
Exactly. Donned high-vis waistcoats, entered carrying wheelie bins.
Not for rubbish, though.
No. To transport their tools, and later, obviously, the loot. After they got in, Basil then turned his attention to the security systems.
And he wasn't exactly subtle about it, was he? Ripping off aerials, cutting wires. Seems a bit crude.
No, not particularly discreet work there. He partially disabled the CCTV by physically damaging the aerial and cutting wires.
Okay.
He also disabled the lift, moved it up to the second floor, tampered with the door sensor,
I'll do that.
created a big drop down to the basement level, and it allowed them to open the lift shutters from the inside.
Clever.
And to complete the illusion, they even placed a handwritten out-of-order sign on the ground floor.
A bit theatrical, isn't it?
A rather theatrical touch for a group of, hardened criminals.
A bit of criminal stagecraft.
Yeah.
But despite their efforts, an alarm still went off.
Yes, it did. The alarm activated when they breached the metal door to the vault area.
Oh.
This alerted the owner, Mr. Bavishi. He sent a guard to check it out.
Yeah.
The guard reported finding nothing suspicious. Seems Basil's tampering, crude as it was, did just enough to prevent immediate detection. Maybe confused things.
Close call. So instead of trying to pick the big Chubb lock on the main vault door, they opted for a more direct approach.
Much more direct. Destructive, really. Drawing on Jones's internet research about drills.
The hill tie.
Exactly. They used the hill tie drill to bore 3 overlapping holes right through the thick concrete walls of the vault.
3 holes.
Yeah, just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Really highlights the importance of that specific drill and the research beforehand.
But their problems weren't over once they were in the vault room, were they? They still had those metal cabinets.
That's right. Bolted floor to ceiling, remember. They'd brought in a 10-ton hydraulic ram to try and knock them down.
10 tons.
Yeah, serious piece of kit. But it seems the ram initially malfunctioned. The pump failed.
Oh no, after all that.
Right, forced them to abandon their efforts for the time being. They actually had to leave and come back later.
They came back.
Yep, returned late Easter Saturday night with a working pump. Their persistence, you have to admit, is pretty remarkable.
Returning for round 2. You do have to acknowledge their determination, even if it's completely illegal. And ultimately, they got into the boxes.
Yes, with the working hydraulic ram, they managed to dislodge the cabinet, then use Jemmy's crowbars basically to force open over 70 individual safety deposit boxes.
70 boxes. And the haul.
The estimated value was around $14 million.
14 million.
Yeah. Jewelry, precious stones, cash, gold bullion, a staggering amount.
And they tried to cover their tracks, CCTV-wise, but missed something.
They did remove the main CCTV hard drive, thinking that covered everything. They overlooked one crucial camera, belonged to a nearby jewelry business. And this camera captured them arriving and leaving. A significant oversight in what was otherwise a remarkably planned, if flawed, operation.
Especially considering they apparently left no forensic evidence behind at the scene itself. It's a real contrast, isn't it? Meticulous in some ways, but a critical slip-up with that one camera.
Exactly. Underscores that even in the most carefully planned crimes, there can be unforeseen elements or just simple human errors that trip you up.
Right. Let's talk about the gear they used. It sounds like a mix of Serious Kid and, well, that book.
A real mix. The diamond-tipped Hilti DD350 drill was absolutely central, obviously, allowed them to get through the concrete.
Essential.
Then the heavy-duty 10-ton hydraulic ram and pump, you needed that for the internal cabinets.
Right.
And perhaps more mundanely, the wheelie bins to transport everything.
To the bins again. Practical thinking. Might have helped them blend in a bit.
Could well have. Then beyond the heavy stuff.
Well, there is the infamous Forensics for Dummies book.
Can't forget that.
And the bypass tool likely used by Basil for entry.
Yep.
Plus more standard stuff. Dust masks, other masks, balaclavas for disguise, walkie-talkies for communication.
Okay.
A magnifying glass was found, too, maybe for checking the loot.
Possibly.
And metal joists. Their exact purpose isn't totally clear from the sources, but maybe for leverage or support during drilling or ramming.
Could be. And some of them had distinctive clothing that helped identify them later.
Yes. Daniel Jones was known for wearing red trainers. That detail came up. Brian Reeder had a very distinctive scarf, apparently, also remembered.
Okay.
And then the disguise itself. Yellow hard hats, high-vis jackets with GAS printed on the back, trying to look official.
So sophisticated tools, basic disguises, and a dummy's guide. Quite the combination. Now let's turn to the investigation and the aftermath. This thing blew up, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Given how they got in, suspicions of inside information were immediate.
Makes sense. Was there any?
Well, despite some investigation, no concrete evidence of significant insider help has ever been publicly confirmed. It's still a bit murky. And the core group reader, Perkins, Jones, Collins group, they just went back to the pub.
Pretty much. Continued their meetings at the castle after the heist. Turned out they were planning how to move the stolen goods to an address in Enfield.
A bit brazen, weren't they? And those post-heist pub chats ultimately led to their downfall.
They really did. The police had managed to place covert listening devices, bugs, in both Collins's and Perkins's cars.
Oh, wow. Fly-on-the-wall stuff.
Exactly. These recordings captured them openly boasting about the heist, arguing about the split.
Arguing already.
Oh, yeah. And generally providing a wealth of, self-incriminating evidence. Basically talking themselves into jail.
Must have been gold dust for the police listening in. And it wasn't just talk. They were physically moving the stuff too.
That's right. Jones was actually seen moving a bucket to the Enfield address.
A bucket.
Yeah, which was later found to contain a significant amount of the stolen jewelry. Undeniable link right there.
And the searches of their homes. Sounds like they found treasure hidden everywhere.
Absolutely. Police found jewels, large amounts of cash, hidden all over. Under microwaves, behind skirting boards.
Seriously.
Yeah, even behind kitchen kickboards. And at Jones's place, besides the book and the tool receipt, they found even more stolen jewelry.
It's almost surreal, isn't it? How casually they seem to have stashed millions of pounds worth of loot. And the public reaction was interesting too, wasn't it? Kind of fascinated, almost admiring these old-school villains.
It's a complex thing. The media definitely played up the narrative of these elderly underdogs pulling off one last big job.
The Diamond Weezers.
Exactly. There's often a romanticized view of the gentleman thief, isn't there? This case seemed to tap right into that.
Maybe people were just intrigued by the sheer audacity and the age factor.
Probably a mix of things. It does raise interesting questions about why society sometimes roots for the, albeit illegal, rebels.
But the law caught up eventually. 5 members were arrested pretty quickly. But Basil, he vanished for a while.
Yeah, Basil, the elusive red-haired man, managed to stay free for several years.
How long?
Until 2018. He was finally caught then. And when they arrested him, police found 143,000 pounds worth of gold and jewelry in his possession.
So he didn't get away clean entirely.
No, seems he held on to some of it. His luck finally ran out.
And what about the others? The ones maybe less involved in the core planning?
Right. Carl Wood, William Lincoln, and Hugh Doyle were later found guilty on charges related to their involvement, mostly in the aftermath.
Okay.
But John Harbinson was acquitted. Shows different levels of participation, different evidence.
Got it. And the big question, the loot. 14 million pounds. Where did it all go?
Well, that's the $1 million, or rather 14 million question, isn't it? The estimated total stolen was that amount. Only about a third has ever been recovered, maybe 4 or 5 million worth, and mostly the lower value pieces.
In the really good stuff.
The higher value jewelry, the loose precious stones, the gold bullion, still missing. Vanished.
Wow, just gone. And the recovered items, it sounds like it was chaos for the victims trying to get their stuff back.
Yeah, a real mess. The recovered items were found all jumbled together. Imagine trying to identify your specific gold chain or ring from hundreds of similar ones.
Nightmare.
And lots of small paper packets with individual stones, all mixed up, made the identification process incredibly difficult and frustrating for the victims, really adds another layer to the impact of the crime.
Absolutely. A terrible ordeal for them. And it turns out, for some of the main players, this wasn't exactly their first rodeo, was it?
No, not by a long shot.
Right.
As our Wikipedia source points out, Brian Reeder wasn't just involved here. He was also the mastermind behind the 1971 Baker Street robbery.
The walkie-talkie robbery.
That's the one. And he was involved in handling gold from the Brinks Mat robbery in '83.
Right.
Terry Perkins. Previous conviction for the 1983 Security Express robbery. Another huge one.
So serious form.
And even Perkins and Jones were linked to a 2010 heist at Chatila Jewelers. These were not first-timers. They had long careers in the British underworld.
A real who's who of major UK heists. And their combined age for the Hatton Garden job was pretty striking.
Yeah, the combined age of the core game was over 450 years. The Diamond Weezers nickname wasn't entirely inaccurate.
And they got hefty sentences for it in the end.
They did. Significant jail time. A final chapter, you might say, for these veteran criminals.
And as we said at the start, this whole saga just grabbed the world's attention, like something out of a movie.
It really did. The audacity, the age factor, the sheer scale of the theft, massive global media interest.
Yeah.
And as the 60 Minutes report mentioned, there are talks of a feature film, maybe more than one. This story isn't going away.
Seems like it has enduring fascination. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, what are the biggest takeaways for you from the Hatton Garden heist?
Well, first, just the sheer audacity and ambition, especially from guys this age. Second, that weird mix of old school crime, the pub meetings, the physical drilling, alongside modern touches like the online drill research.
Right.
Then there's the role of both luck, the alarm not quite working, and critical mistakes like missing that CCTV camera.
A real combination.
And finally, I suppose, the enduring mystery, the missing loot. Basil's identity remaining hidden for so long.
Yeah, that missing 10 million or so is still out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And it is quite remarkable how seemingly casual some of the planning felt. These older guys in a pub plotting this huge job.
Absolutely.
And that initial public reaction, almost rooting for them.
Yeah.
That's a striking aspect, too.
It really is. So, considering the meticulous planning in some ways and that huge amount of valuables still missing, it prompts a final thought for you, our listeners, to maybe chew on.
Okay.
What does the Hatton Garden heist ultimately tell us about the nature of high-stakes crime today and the challenges, the real difficulties law enforcement faces in getting that stolen fortune back?
Hmm.
And maybe, does the romanticized image, the movie versions, risk overshadowing the very real impact on the people who lost everything? The victims of what Danny Jones himself called, well, the biggest Tom jewelry history in the fucking world.
Something to think about, definitely.
Mm.
A fascinating story with layers upon layers.